Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Dennison. Ed?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have one of our honorees with us today, Philip Rush from New Zealand. Philip, say hello to everyone.
Good evening, good morning, and whatever time you are in the world. Great to see you all.
Phil, let's start off with the English Channel. You had a bit of a love affair with that water. 10 crossings, you set the two-way record back in the day, and you broke several records on an epic three-way, some of which are still in place. Talk to us about the lessons learned as you steadily took on that English Channel.
Well, I think it's not a 5-minute wonder. You don't turn up in England and all of a sudden decide, right, I'm going to swim the English Channel 3 ways and it's going to happen on one set of tides. It just doesn't happen like that. You know, that 3-way record, it took around about 3 years, and as you've said, 9 or 10 crossings, if I remember rightly, and to get the weather right for the long period of time to be able to swim it well and also build up the endurance. You've got to remember, before we were landing in Dover, we would have done the world circuit where I'd be racing Steve in some of those swims and the warm water ones. The cold water ones, he wasn't so good, but so we'd be building up. We'd be building up to, and that took 3 years. And every year I'd go there, I'd swim one crossing. And as Steve would remember, Tony Keenan, who was my coach at the time, he never let me hop out halfway across. So I always had to finish the one because the weather might change. He always said, you never know what's going to happen. And of course, we would always do one, turn around and come back. If it didn't work, then we'd pull out, but we always had to finish that first crossing. So the main lessons learned from that is you've got to be persistent. And, you know, marathon swimming these days, a lot of them arrive, they want to swim tomorrow and they want to go and do something the next day, travel or whatever. You can't do that. You've got to actually spend time, and especially with the longer swims, when you've got tide issues, you've got weather issues, and a lot of the time you've got pilot issues.
And physically and mentally, the difference between going for a single and going for a multi?
Well, I went there the first year and I was going to swim 3 ways. You know, I knew I could do it. Tony knew I could do it, and of course, I turned up in Dover and said, well, we're here to swim the English Channel 3 ways. And they thought, a couple of cowboys from down in the sticks. You know, what a lot of rubbish. And the first year we got in and went something like 17 and a half hours for a double. And it was a new record. And then all of a sudden they said, right, well, maybe they aren't as bloody green as they look. But, you know, it's a team effort. And I always go on when I talk about that swim about we. I mean, yes, I did the 28 hours, 21 minutes and eventually did it. And we had a pilot who was Mike Oram, who's taken so many swims. And he told me after that first year what times I was going to do. And he was within 5 to 10 minutes of each crossing. He said, but we just need to get the weather right. And of course, Tony's job was to keep me alive and keep me on the straight and narrow. So all in all, it's got to be the team. If the team doesn't bond, you are pushing yourself. And if you ever got somebody that knows how to look after you and knows about swimming, about eating properly, about, you know, all those sorts of things to keep you alive, because that's their job, is to keep you alive. And if they can keep you well fed and alive, and you can control what's going on in your head, you can do anything you want to do.
Are you ever going to come out of hiding in New Zealand? Because Mike Oram says that you promised him a Rolex watch if you broke the record, and you broke 7 records, but only gave him 1 watch. He's still waiting for you, Phil.
Well, you know, and you know, I was young and full of crap, excuse my English, back in those days. And of course I thought, next year I'll just get another Rolex, it'll be easy. Well, I missed the bloody thing by about 2 minutes, didn't I? And of course, he's got the Rolex, all engraved on the back. I've got some bloody old plastic thing. So, you know, who's the winner?
I love the story. By the way, an incredibly generous gift, and one of the best recognitions that it actually takes a team to do these things.
Yeah, sorry.
Final question on the English Channel. How closely did you watch Chloe's triple a couple of years ago in Sarah Thomas's four-way? And will there be a five-way?
Chloe's swim, I don't think was, I spoke to her at different times and sort of said to her, maybe she needed to go faster on the first lap. And she could have had a good chance at the record or getting close. Sarah had been in New Zealand and swum Cook Strait with me on a hellishing day, and you know, I wrestled with the decision on whether we were going to swim that day, and we put her out there, and I beat the living crap out of her, excuse my English, but for that swim, and it was a very difficult swim, and she got there. She hopped out, and we sat on the boat and talked about the English Channel on the way home and just talked about swimming. And at that point, I knew if she ever got her opportunity to get in there, that she would be the one that was going to be something special. And she was. You know, when you look what she put herself through for that English Channel, it just shows the sort of mind, and that's the sort of mind you need to do these long, long swims. She controlled it. She controlled her swimming. Yes, she could have gone a little bit quicker on the first lap. Her body wasn't letting her. She wasn't feeling well. And I monitored it through day and through night, and I was so thrilled because I couldn't, she was the best person for that job. And, you know, I've talked about it. I have regrets in my life. I have one regret in my swimming career. And I share this with people these days. And Tony, who Steve knows well, we sat on the beach and he came up to me. He said, we've got 10 minutes. He said, I've got a question for you. How far back can you go? And I said, he said, I'm going to go away. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Remembering we had dead flat conditions all the way. And everybody was buggered. I was sitting there thinking, what the hell is this guy on? And then he came back, he said, so how far back can you go? I said, I know I can go halfway. He stood there, he threw the towel over me, picked me up off the beach, and he said, it's better to be known for the 3 good ones that you've done. Well, that prick should have kicked my ass back into the English Channel and said, just bloody get on with it. Now, and he's passed away since, and I would be telling him exactly the same thing. As I get more mature in life, I think of that and think, why didn't we give it a go? Because all I had to do was give it a go, and who knows what would have happened. We had a beautiful day. You don't get them in the English Channel.
I'm going to bring you across the world to Cook Strait now. If my memory serves me right, you had 5 crossings, 2 doubles and records. Describe the special challenges of the Cook Strait.
Cook Strait it's special. It is very special. We have a piece of water 26 kilometres wide. And we have a big volume of water funneling through Cook Strait. So, you know, the English Channel now, they're swimming on the springs, and a lot of swims now are swimming on spring tides. We can't. There's just too much volume of water. And what happens, it's about 15 degrees to 17 degrees. You know, we have good summers and we have bad summers. Wellington is known as Windy Wellington for a reason. And what happens, we get a big swell and we get chop on top of the water. And, you know, I set a pace for swimmers if they want to come with me. And, you know, people do a lot of training. They travel a long way, and I hate not succeeding for them. I take responsibility for that, you know, and that is why, you know, we won't take anybody. I advise people that they need to swim at least 3 kilometres an hour. Otherwise, you know, take up playing chess, because it's not going to happen. Unless very, very rarely. There's a 10% chance if you swim under 3 kilometres an hour of getting across Cook Strait. Now, those rates aren't good. So hence I say we need 3.5 Ks an hour. We need 3. We will get the odd exception. But, you know, maybe once a year we'll get somebody that tells me they swim 3.5 Ks an hour and we end up getting 2.5 Ks an hour. But it is a special piece of water just because of what goes down the side of Cook Strait. There's all sorts of rocks and it's very, very deep, and the swell that pushes up from that is huge. And then if we get a little bit of wind, we've got wind on top of the swell, and it's just a place you don't want to be.
You have a special shark rule in the Cook Strait organization. Talk to us about that and how often you use it.
It's been used once. It's been used once, and it came into effect in the early days, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I'll explain it this way, that we swim with an IRB, an inflatable, beside the swimmer all the time. If a shark is seen, and these sharks are, they're not little hammerhead sharks or anything like that. We have a lot of white pointers come through there, and they're going down to the south, down south, it's travelling. You're allowed in the IRB for 10 minutes, and 10 minutes only. The IRB goes into neutral, and you sit there, and obviously, after the 10 minutes, the swim is invalid if it is longer than 10 minutes. If the shark goes away and you've got the nous to get back in, you're in and you're on your way again. We've had it happen before, and it's been used once that I was out there, and the shark actually circled the inflatable, and as you see them quite often, they turn their head to the side and they smile, and you see their pearly whites. Well, this is what the shark did twice round the IRB. All of a sudden, 100 dolphins came down Cook Strait and took the shark out to sea, and obviously they actually killed the sharks. But this one person who hopped back in that day finished at 10:30 at night, and it's like putting your head in a plastic bag. And what was going through her mind, she was an incredibly strong lady to be able to do that, because my eyeballs were sitting bloody near on the water trying to look for what was going on. So it's once been used, but under these days, under health and safety, if we didn't have that and all of a sudden a shark came along and ate the swimmer, I would probably be doing time in the local prison.
You want to give us that? You want to give us that lady's name, or keep it to yourself?
You know her.
Grania Gunn?
And it's Grania Moss from Ireland, and she still tells the story, and my story is exactly the same. And but incredibly tough lady to be able to do mentally, to be able to do that. She watched this bloody shark go round the IRB and smile at her. Incredible strength to be able, because I said to her, we're sitting there, I said, I don't know if I could hop back in, and I still don't. And she hopped back in, swum through the night.
You become a very popular swim. I can blame part of that on running a great organization. You blame part of it on Mr. Munatonis for Ocean Sevens. You've got a lot of people that want to do it, and you've recently added some more boat capacity. Tell us about the struggle with doing that and how it's going.
I'm not sure what ones I've just had a new vessel built. And I'm in the process of having another one built for Cook Strait. I'm not sure if you're meaning your Irish friends that are turning up out of the blue and don't know what they're doing, but I'll stick that one in to start with. But, you know, it's like me saying I'm going to come to Ireland and start taking swimmers across the channel. I've got no bloody idea what's going on out there, but I can still do it. But okay, I've got my point made there. But we are now, and because of COVID, I mean, I had a full book. I've had boats built, and as you can imagine, they're not cheap for boats that are seaworthy in Cook Strait. And of course, we've got COVID now, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen this season coming about getting people into the country and getting the swimmers into the country. You know, we have to quarantine in this country now. So it's going to be a funny year, I think, all round for open water swimming, which is a concern because Steve and he's made this bloody Ocean 7 so popular that we, you know, it's like the plague. It's just crawling.
So can I say that you've got twice the boat capacity now that you had 10 years ago for that swim?
We've got,
fair statement?
I'm up to four vessels under me now, and we run 4 full setups. So each launch has an inflatable with medically trained personnel on them in the inflatable, and we go down as a team, get started, and we go across as a group. You know, as a group. Obviously faster, slower, all over you know, we end up all over Cook Strait because the tide is so strong, you know, 100 metres ahead, next minute you're a mile ahead, next minute you know, you could be 2 miles ahead.
Okay. You were on the professional circuit for nearly 10 years, Atlantic City, Lake Saint Jean, including those infamous two-way swims, Capri, Naples, Memphremagog. Contrast all of these events and start with the pre and post parties and talk about the swims. What were your favorites? Where were your challenges?
Well, your favourites are always the one you do well at, aren't you? And I always liked Atlantic City. You know, it was a fun place to go. You had the boardwalk. You swam down the boardwalk, as Steve would remember, and then you swam in and out of the parties all the way around the back of the swim. And it was just a great learning curve. You know, I was still a young guy. I was sort of 17, 18, and we were on, you know, I was hanging out with all these rock stars and you know, people like Steve. That's how we met. And, you know, I always knew if it was Memphremagog was always warm, it was always a good party town, but it was, that was never good for me. Memphremagog is a shallow lake, too hot, where Steve would just scream past me, but I always knew next week was Lake St. John and he was going to freeze his whatsits off. So, and Lake St. John for me was very special. It's a very special lake. It's bloody cold, which is great. And there's one you didn't mention out there, and it's a place, and Steve would remember it, it's a place called Pesbibiac, which was even further out on the coast. Now, we all lined up there one day, and I'll tell this story. You used to swim a mile to start with. It was about 18 miles, I think, or 18 Ks across, and you'd swim a mile at the end. Well, of course, the Americans, Paul Asmith, I'm not sure if Steve ever got up there, but all the Americans were, you know, they were 15-minute, 1,500-metre swimmers. Well, I was never anywhere near that. But I always knew when it was bloody cold, they'd go home crying. And this one race, bang, it started. Americans were out by the time the 1,500 was over. They were all in hospital with hypothermia because it was 6 or 7 degrees. Anyway, there was 3 of us left because it was always just a select invited group. And it was Claudio Plitt and Nasser El Shazli. And Steve knows my coach. He was a hard bugger. Anyway, we're getting halfway across and the radios start going and they all wanted to pull out. Why don't we all pull out together and we'll split the money 3 ways? And Tony said, oh, no, we're doing all right. We're feeling pretty good. He said, why don't you talk to us in the next half hour? Next half hour comes around and they're all hopping out of the water. So Tony, looking after me, radioed up the organisers and said, well, we're the only ones left. You know, we've done close to 6 hours. We've got probably another 3 because the weather wasn't that good. He said, well, we might as well be the champions that day. And they said, yes, all hop out. And of course, there was a hell of a blue because You know, I got first prize, got the big cup and the check. And of course, they all ended up in hospital, bloody near unconscious. So, you know, being able to swim in the cold water was always a bonus.
Interestingly, I never saw your name on a Latin American swim.
No, we never, but once again, a lot of them were warm. They were very, you know, they were warm swims. We went down to Cabo St. Lucas. There used to be a swim down there in Cabo. And of course, hot, 30 degrees. And they all took off and I ended up with heat stroke. You know, I'm not used to the warm weather and warm water, and it's just no good for me. And I knew, you know, at the end, I knew it was pointless even wasting my money and time going to them because, you know, it was just too hot. I wasn't a good warm water swimmer because I didn't have the speed. But in the cold, you know, I could stay there forever.
After your elite career and as a swimmer was over, you've given back tremendously, not only to Cook Strait, but also the New Zealand team. Talk to us about your involvement at the country level, what you're most proud of, your top swimmers, the experience, and most interestingly, what your coach was never able to get you to understand that all of a sudden you understood as a coach?
Temperaments of young people, young athletes, and their and getting them into. I mean, the 10K has been great. It's been great for swimming. It has been great for open water swimming, but it also has its downfalls. They want to be the rock stars, and they are the rock stars. They turn up to the Olympics, and it's a different type of swimming. You know, we started in New Zealand. I took and Steve would also remember this, when I took a young lady, Alana Jury, to Italy to the World Champs. And that was my first taste back into the sport. Well, of course, mum and dad had to come as well. And there's another downfall of having parents involved in athletes. It's very difficult. Well, Alana ended up in, I think, 13th or 11th at the World Champs. So that was the start. And, you know, she was pre-puberty. So, and then all of a sudden they're saying, well, we've got somebody here who's gonna really do well and come through. And then, of course, female athletes, it all happens differently. You know, puberty comes and, you know, they can either excel from it or die from it. Well, poor Alana she never performed that well again with all the training and everything we did. But we built from there. We had a platform. I ended up with Cara Baker and Kane Radford, Kane ended up going to the Olympics eventually under, and Cara Baker ended up 5th in the 5K in Barcelona. So, you know, and the success of those swims, we were breeding and breeding. You know, I spent a lot of time developing the young kids and just giving them a bit of mojo to get out and give it a go. You know, we went to having a national championship, 100 odd people in the 10K. Now that was pretty good for a small country of, and we got all the clubs involved. And just giving it a try, because there's so many swimmers and athletes that aren't going to make it at 100 metres, but they train hard. New Zealanders were built for endurance, and they were loving it. But once again, pool swimming, it looks so good. You know, the 10K wasn't everybody's cup of tea, and now it has sort of taken a little bit of a dive in the country. And I'd like to think that we did at the time really support them. And it's about supporting them and getting the racing. We're a long way away from anywhere. You need to be racing these events all the time so you know how you're going to perform. And, you know, but they still need to be able to get into that 1500, and nothing has changed. They need to get into that 1500 and bloody swim sub 15 minutes. If you want to be competitive, you've got to be swimming sub 15, and probably less now. So, and we're in swimming in general, we're having a little bit of a dry patch, so to say. But we will come back as a country, as a nation, because the Kiwis are the pool swimmers and the open water swimmers. They're tough. They're tough people.
You still haven't told me what you learned since you became a coach that you refused to learn as a jumped up upstart swimmer.
Probably don't drink so much after and party so hard.
Okay. Because I was told that Atlantic City used to make notes on which parties you wanted to hit as you were going around the back bay.
That was a long time ago. I can't quite remember.
I said Cassidy told us. It must be true.
Yeah, no, I think these days, you know, our athletes they need to be taking it seriously, but they still have to control the mind. And that is the thing. If you can control that mind while you're training and swimming, you can do anything. You need talent, yes, but then if you can control the mind, and that's what a lot of people aren't prepared to train hard at speed, and just grind yourself into the dust, basically, every session. Yes, we have all these recovery sessions now, and there's a lot more scientific evidence, but I still believe that the best trainers win.
Last question for you, Phil. You mentioned sitting on the beach in would have been probably France on your triple, although you never know where you started back in those days. And I'm sure that was one of your great memories. Give us a couple of the other great memories of your time as an elite swimmer.
I think Lake St. John is so special to me. You know, Claudio Plitt and I, for the first 2 years of the double crossing, had some of the best battles that I could ever imagine. And just talking about it now, I'm getting shivers down my spine talking about it, because we fought night and day. We started at 10 o'clock at night, obviously. We went across the lake and we pretty well eyeballed each other all the way across. We went up, he got ahead of me, I caught him up again, and then we stopped and shook hands for the final mile. And at the largest is after 18 and a half hours, and we shook hands, had a drink, and we both looked at each other and said, well, we might as well get on with it. And then it went 1,500 metres of your finest. And the prick beat me by 1/10 of a second the first year, and it was a couple of seconds the year after. We both ended up in hospital and bed side by side. And in those days, he got the 25,000 and I got the 17,000. So, and you know, that was good money back then. I think we had the best of years of the open water swimming. You know, in those days, that was big money. And I'm not saying FINA has ruined the sport, but they have taken the opportunities for swimmers to earn good money. And we earned good money, and we deserved it because we worked hard. We travelled hard. We travelled, and you know, we were doing a swim a week. But Lake St. John, because it was cold, Claudio was good in the cold as well. And but they were as far as the racing was concerned, that was the best I could ever do. And you know, the English Channel, it's a great piece of water. It's an outstanding piece of water. It's not a hard piece of water to swim. You know, you get in, you bloody swim, you do 5 hours, 10 hours, 15, 20 hours. You'll get there if you stay in the water. You will get there. Europe is a very big place to land.
They've changed the rules recently. If you get in that Calais shipping channel now, they're yanking you. It's no longer. It used to be kind of you could negotiate, and certainly we had a friend who ended up. He was 16 miles from the cap going towards Belgium. He was 8 miles the other side of Calais.
Yeah,
they're just not letting you do that anymore. So if you're unlucky with the tides and your speed is wrong, you end up in that Calais approach, and it's an automatic out now. So
right, and that, that's the nature of our sport these days. Yes, gone are the days of wallowing around there, hours and hours on end, 25 hours for one crossing, whatever. I won't allow it here in Cook Strait either. I don't say won't allow it, but, eventually, we're either going to Australia or we're going down south. And, it gets to a point when you know that it's not going to happen, and it's gut-wrenching for that swimmer that's travelled all the way from America or wherever. But at the end of the day, I don't want to put them through any more than they have to. And these are the things that I take the responsibility for that. It's not the coach's job, it's me. To take that I'm not going to put you through any more pain than you have to, especially if I know that we're not going to be successful. Whether that's right or wrong, but I've had some shockers, and I'm in tears myself when I'm sort of trying to sell you the deal that I'm really sorry. We're not going to get there today, and we have to pull you. It's not a nice thing to do, and it's gut-wrenching.
Well, at least one of the Catalina pilots has started to introduce a graduated fee scale. It's a certain amount for 12 hours, and it's $181 after that per hour.
Jesus, where's his contract? I want to see that one.
Well, one of our guys was recently out there and completed the swim a minute or two under that first cutoff payment. And the famous story is his wife was yelling at him for the last half an hour. Come on now, I would be paying another $181. Get your butt going here. But it is one of the changes, and I think the other change for me, and I'm sure you've been on this for some time, is the idea that you're going to swim until you die. That's old thinking. That's not going to happen anymore. A good crew, a good organization is going to say to the swimmer, okay, your stroke rate's gone from 60 to 50. You can't swim straight anymore. You don't know your first name. You haven't been able to keep a feed down for 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's over. We don't need you in the hospital.
Yeah, be assured, if you do that in the first half of Cook Strait, you're gone. If I've got you within a mile of the finish, I will kick your ass until you bloody are unconscious. And whether you get on the rocks or not, you would have given me 110%. But, you've got to be close to do those sorts of things. And these days, under health and safety, I must admit I have pulled back a little bit. I don't hit them with the paddle anymore because they might go me in court. So I've had to change my habits a little bit.
And I understand from a few friends that last mile of Cook Strait can be a little bit challenging.
It certainly can. I can't wait till you come, Ned. I'm waiting for you.
I'm not getting any younger. We had one of our men finish the English Channel yesterday. He was unsuccessful last year. And on the video at one point, they yelled at him, go one lap of Sandy Cove Island, which is our training ground. It's 1,600 meters. And I distinctly remember hearing that in the Santa Barbara Channel. And I went about 100 meters in 850 right arm strokes, which is my count for Sandy Cove. And I looked up and I thought, there's a little bit of bad current here. So that's sometimes not the best thing to say. Phil, thank you very, very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. All the best to everybody out there, and keep training.
Take care.